The story of Telltale's unceremonious collapse continues to develop, ladies and gentlemen. We have previously talked all about how the studio closed out of the blue under the worst possible circumstances for employees due to egregious mismanagement. We also discussed how one of the employees filed a class action lawsuit against the company for violating the WARN Act labor laws, which stipulates that employees need at least 60 days worth of warning prior to mass layoffs so everyone can start working towards transitioning to new employment, something that Telltale woefully failed to do. Most recently, we heard that Telltale was scrambling to find a company who would be willing to rehire former staff of the original creative team to finish the remaining 2 episodes of Walking Dead final season, which raised a number of questions like how would that be possible considering the laid-off Walking Dead team members aren't just sitting around waiting for a call from Telltale, and would they even want to return working with the studio and its partners after everything they've been put through? Now, you may recall that while 250 employees were let go from Telltale in light of this majority closure, a skeleton crew of 25 did remain. The initial hope was that they were there to finish the remaining episodes of Walking Dead, but we quickly learned that their purpose was to fulfill obligations to its board and partners, with one such obligation being a Minecraft story mode project they were working on with Netflix. I should also point out that in regards to the remaining 25 employees, Telltale Games CEO Pete Hawley tweeted the following: "Mike, to be clear, we are not shutting down. As odd as that may sound, 25 of us will continue, foreseeable. I'll make further comment in the coming weeks." Well, A, even if the studio isn't technically fully shut down, it might as well be dead for all intents and purposes, and B, turns out that assurances regarding how these 25 would remain for some time didn't end up panning out. The following information comes from Telltale ex-narrative designer Rachel, who made it known via Twitter on October 4th, 2018, that members of those 25 have been laid off as well. Her string of tweets reads as follows: "Hey, remember how there was going to be a skeleton crew staying on for a while and I was a part of it? Nah, JK, we all just got laid off too. Thank you guys for the sympathy, I'm grateful for the support. My intention here was to update y'all about my status. I don't have anything further to say about what's next for the company. I think there was a misunderstanding about my earlier message. There are still good people at the company. My team is done." So, to clarify, it is not that all 25 members of the skeleton crew were laid off, but rather a significant portion of it, specifically Rachel and her team. How many members that comprises of is entirely unknown, but if Telltale wasn't a shadow of its former self before, it sure as hell is now. Rachel then tweeted a few minutes later about some of the terrible working conditions she experienced working at the studio, tweeting the following Blade Runner reference: "I've seen things you people wouldn't believe. 80-hour crunch weeks, mismanagement of some of the industry's top talent. All of those will be lost in time, like tears in the rain. Time to die." Now, for those hoping that Telltale will still somehow find a way to finish Walking Dead final season, given there is still some staff left at the company, it looks like the search for a partner to aid in that endeavor continues. In fact, a few hours prior to Rachel's tweets about the latest layoffs, Robert Kirkman, writer and co-creator of the Walking Dead comics, provided some vague assurances during a panel at New York Comic Con when asked during the Q&A portion by an attendee if it's safer to expect the final season to be finished in comic book format in light of recent developments. To that inquiry, Robert provided the following response: "Stay tuned. Everyone involved is trying to make sure Clementine's story is told. I'm not concerned at the moment with telling that story in the comics." So, it would seem as though Telltale is still scrambling behind the scenes, and the hope they have right now, as previously reported by Kotaku sources, is that a willing partner will rehire some, if not all, of the original Walking Dead creative team to lead episodes 3 and 4 of the final season to their completion. The good news is that episode 3 is seemingly pretty much done, requiring a few weeks of polish, and the framework for episode 4 is already there with a first round of voice work for the main characters having been finished, and a first playable build being almost there as well, requiring maybe 2 or 3 months of work to finish. So it's not as if there isn't enough completed material to see this project through. But the bad news is that such an endeavor still does require convincing disillusioned members of the original Walking Dead team, who were laid off under terrible conditions, to return rather than move on to greener pastures. It's a big ask considering it's still months of additional work and considering how royally they were screwed over by Telltale Games and how they weren't given any heads up about the spontaneous plans. Telltale upper management's lapse in communication is what led to the disastrous upending of employees' lives in the first place, and now it's made it that much more difficult to ensure that Walking Dead final season will ever be completed. Then again, if a company that Telltale finds is willing to step in and can assure fair compensation, stability, and benefits, we might just see enough members of the original team being willing to return and see Walking Dead final season all the way through despite strenuous circumstances. At the same time, I wouldn't blame anyone from the original team who gave this prospect a hard pass, considering they were given no warning, no severance, and no prolonged benefits before they were laid off. These folks are currently in full survival mode, and they cannot be thinking about what the fans want right now. They have to think about their families and about making ends meet, and if that means everyone has to move on to new studios and say goodbye to Walking Dead, then so be it. At the end of the day, if you want to blame someone for this, blame Telltale upper management. If anyone deserves flack, it is them. I mean, even with a skeleton crew of a mere 25 people, we are still seeing mismanagement take its course. Pete Hawley assured that all 25 members of the skeleton crew would remain for the foreseeable future, and yet 2 weeks later we are already hearing reports of staff members among this skeleton crew being laid off under circumstances that aren't much better than the prior 250 layoffs, no less. At this point, it feels like Walking Dead final season is running on fumes through incompetent life support, so it may just be time to pull the plug rather than prolong this charade. If by some miracle everyone manages to get what they want, meaning the original team is rehired with fair financial compensation, and fans get to in turn experience finished episodes 3 and 4 as originally intended, then that would certainly be ideal. But ideal doesn't always play well with possible, and under the present circumstances, given it's just been one unfortunate development after another, and given how assurances so far have been nothing but vague, empty, and outright false in this case, I cannot recommend that you hold your breath for the most desirable outcome. Ultimately though, nobody knows for sure what the future holds, so I suppose only time will tell how things turn out. Expect the worst, but hope for the best, as they say. In the meantime, I'd love to hear what your take is on the latest layoffs and how hopeful or hopeless you think this situation is in the comments below. With that, I would like to end this news update. Thank you for tuning in. If you enjoy my content and would like to support this channel directly, consider donating on Patreon. And to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.